Today I'm going to talk to you for about 30 minutes and then do a 10-minute demonstration and then followed by the question and answer session. So just bear with me as I go through my PowerPoint presentation, and if you have any questions, obviously you can, as Candace said, ask on chat or at the end. So today I'm just, this is an overview of the complete presentation. I'm going to go over who we are, what is the Integration and Application Network. We always get that question. And then I'm going to cover science communication as we see it, using a bit of theory and also mostly about applications. And I'm going to focus on one of the tools of science communication, what we use, conceptual diagrams. So the Integration and Application Network, our aim is to enable better communication to empower change. This is just a screenshot of our website, which you can check out later on, and I'm going to go through that with the conceptual diagram tutorial. Our group is a group of scientists. We've all gone to at least through our undergrad, if not master's or PhD level of science, and then we've taught ourselves science communication and graphic design through our work. So in general, scientists like to study science, but we here at Ian are interested in solving, not just studying environmental problems. And we see a little bit of a difference between these two things. Usually when you're studying science and you're a pure scientist, you need to be dispassionate about your work and look at it objectively. You want to embrace the complexity of a system and individual research questions. And you focus on publishing and funding through peer-reviewed papers, right? So we talk a lot about peer review, how many papers are out there, and funding-wise comes through these types of avenues. In the case of a pure scientist, you're really looking at getting it right and getting all the little details figured out. But we like to think about solving environmental problems by being passionate about these things. You need to care that you want to make a change in the world and be passionate about those changes that you're hoping to see. We also focus on simplifying complex systems so that we can communicate these things to managers and resource decision makers. These kinds of things need to be simplified and really come down to what can we do to fix things. We actually focus on publishing and funding via stakeholders. So every project that we work on, it's very collaborative. It engages not only the public, but also managers, fellow scientists. It's always a group activity kind of thing. And that is, we are solely funded on these types of projects. And we do also do peer-reviewed publications. We also focus on getting it done. We're very productive. We focus a lot on the product and how the product can drive the whole process. We are making a global impact. This is just a quick map of all the places we've worked. We obviously work all around the United States. One of our biggest projects right now is the Mississippi River Watershed Report Card, and that's a multi-year project that we've gone through several iterations of, and the final one's coming out this fall. But we also do report cards and integrated assessments in science communication throughout the world. We have ties to Australia because Bill Dennison, our founder and boss, he went to Australia for 10 years, and so we have a really good working relationship with the different state agencies and academics over in Australia. And one of the things that we're focusing on is creating a global single language. So I would say that we have created a global single language. They're on our website. You can download all the individual symbols, and here's are just examples of the symbols that we have, but we have thousands of them. And we also have an image library online. So if you're looking for real photos of the processes happening in an ecosystem or the impacts that humans are having on the world, we have a whole image library. And all the symbols and all the images are free and downloadable for you guys at any time. So for this talk, I want to focus on a couple things. I'm going to revisit the long history of effective science communication, provide some overarching science communication principles that we, use, and establish our underlying philosophy. As many people know, great scientists were actually also great communicators. We know about these scientists because they communicated to the public. So Charles Darwin, as an example, he was incredibly prolific. He wrote over 119 published books and papers. And he also had a way of speaking about nature and about science that was really eloquent. And so here's a quote about the coral reefs and the atolls that he was very, very interested in. And you'll see he was also communicating through visual elements. So here's a very basic diagram of the different parts of a coral reef. And, that's a great drawing and something that can still be used today and people can really understand it. Albert Einstein's another example of someone who's just incredibly prolific, a great scientist, but also a great communicator. And as always, his quote is, "Make everything as simple as possible, but not simpler." So here's just a very quick slide of how the paradigm shifts have occurred as scientific discovery was effectively communicated to society. And I'm just going to use the examples of Copernicus and Galileo. These were huge changes in the beliefs of people, and they were, going against the church to say things like the earth revolves around the sun and not the other way around. And they were adamant about communicating this clearly to the public and to as many people as they could talk to. And so throughout history, we see these kind of paradigm shifts with these huge discoveries, whether it's in physics or biology, chemistry, evolution. And so this is kind of where we're going toward. We want to go towards a more of sustainability shift, right, and hopefully sustain our natural resources and restore our world. So some basic principles of analytical design. One of the ways to think about this is through Edward Tufte's work, and I encourage you to look at his books if you don't know of him, or he's written some great books about visual displays of information. And so kind of the summary of this is that he always says integrate word, image, and numbers. Always focus on being content-driven. You don't want to just put fluff into anything. Everything that is in a publication or a website or a phone app, it should be rich with information and content. And presentation enables thinking. This is definitely something we use all the time, which is just doing the product, whether it's a publication or a PowerPoint presentation. It will actually help you to clarify your thoughts and clarify what you're trying to say. So just getting into the nitty-gritty and doing things will actually help that broader perspective. Use small multiples. This pretty much means you want people to focus on the content, so the layout, the design, the colors, they should be consistent and not jarring, not overly bright or too small text, so that you want to focus on the content and not be distracted by the layout or the design. Know your content and your audience. This, I think everybody knows, you want to focus on the type of audience. If you're presenting to a 6th grade class, science class, that's a very different presentation than if you're going to a scientific conference. And always remember to use humor and hyperbole. I think science is very, very serious, but there's always room for humor. A recent designer that people have really been focusing on in the last couple of years, and he actually gives workshops. The workshops are called Information is Beautiful, and the guy is David McCandless, and he's really focused on data visualization, so big data and how you get big data to look good. And so I just bolded some of the main things that I think are important, but I would also encourage you to look up his website, DataViz, and check it out. But I like his idea of remember visual language, so always add a visual element whenever possible. It's very hard sometimes, you just want to break out a PowerPoint presentation without gathering images, but it's really important to always have a visual element. Some people read, some people like to look at pictures. Less is more. What can you take out? When you get to the end of your presentation, or if you get to the end of a publication, what can you take out? Are those things really necessary? Color, color, color. Draw a color palette from your subject matter. This means, if you're talking about the water world and you're looking at coastal ecosystems, you're probably going to want to use blue as the water and blue as your tones of your colors. And so a lot of products that you see that talk about ecosystems or about the natural resources tend to use these kinds of colors of brown, blue, green. And always think about text. So text should be more than just text. It's also a graphical element that you can use. And it's think about what font you're using, what size you're using, what the color of those texts mean. And so that can actually be incorporated as a visual element. Science communication is a balance of quality science and communication. This is our kind of summary of what we think of science communication. Here on the left-hand side, you have a graph showing increasing science quality, and most scientists are here. They're doing really great science, but maybe they're stuck in their ivory tower and they're not really getting out there to the public or to the managers. And then over here, you have increasing communication quality, especially nowadays with so much, the digital world. You've got most modern politicians, celebrities, they're always communicating, but we need to get these guys together. And so we have this kind of stakeholder vision where everyone can increase the science quality at the same time that they're increasing their communication quality so that we can all be up here in the top together. This always drives a shared vision for what you're trying to accomplish. So this, in some ways, science communication employs different communication techniques than, say, science writing. So over here we've got, with scientific writing, you provide a lot of scientific context references. You've got pages and pages of references of more studies that folks can look at. Typically, there's more text than graphics, so you're talking about writing a lot with a few key figures. Authorship is exclusive. You're thinking, okay, who really truly helped me on this? Do they deserve to be an author on my paper that I've worked, many, many years to accomplish? And typically, these papers are focused on results and interpretation. When it comes to science communication, I think that we need to provide societal context, give examples of when this has happened in real life, make it personal to people. We always try to go for 50% text and 50% graphics. Very hard. We sometimes miss the mark ourselves, and it's always a game of trying to cut down text on how much you can really fit on a page. And we're authorship inclusive. We always, most of the time this is driven by stakeholders, and we want to be inclusive so that everyone can has that shared vision and the buy-in on the final product. And we also focus on conclusions and recommendations. In something like a report card, you're going to give, all right, here's the report card, great. This is the result of what the health of the day is. But really, you want to focus on, okay, then what do I do about it? What are the conclusions and the recommendations that I can suggest, based on these results? And good science communication can make you a better scientist. I know a lot of people, it's hard to take that time to communicate, but it can actually make your science better. So doing good science communication can help with completeness. So you want to envision a story that can lead to a comprehensive research program. Envisioning the story can help you identify the linkages between different parts of the process that you're looking at. It can identify data gaps or knowledge gaps that you didn't realize that you had. It can also provide context. So identifying the linkages and developing these comparisons actually provide these important insights that you might not have seen if you hadn't thought, okay, I need to make this map, and I need to show my results on this map. And then that can really trigger some important insights. Visualization, so combining visual elements can lead to new insights. I think that's, a huge part of what we do is really showing in pictorial format what's happening in a system. And I'm going to go into more detail with the diagrams. And synthesis. There's so much data out there now. There's big data sets, but we want to combine and synthesize that into something that can really tell a story, and then this can lead back to, okay, well, now I know I need to look more in detail into this one part, or it can help you define your next research study. As an example of something where good science comes together with good communication for the greater good of the societal reasons, this is an example of John Snow's 1854 cholera map. And so there was a cholera outbreak in London, and this is a map that John Snow drew of the streets. And the P's with the little orange circles are the water pumps. So back in the day, you had to take your bucket and you walked to a water pump and you sat there and you pumped your water into a bucket and took it home. So he went around and he plotted out where the water pumps are, and then he went door to door asking who had died from cholera. And then he plotted those on this map. And you can see that the deaths are occurring around this one water pump. And so the pump handle was removed and the cholera was subsided. So this is a simple but excellent example of taking science and using it effectively to have a better outcome. So the art of science communication is the visual elements. So I'm broken it down into 5 things: conceptual diagrams, They can provide context and synthesis, and like I said, this is going to be my next part of my talk. Maps are excellent. Always have good maps. Always work with a GIS specialist or use GIS yourself to really show this kind of information-rich graphic. Photos describes the methods, the study site processes. Just always be taking photos, even if you're going out for other people's work. If you're just out for fun, always be taking photos that will then actually be useful later on in your work. Video clips. Who's watching this video instead of listening to me speak on this slide? I mean, video is always an excellent resource, and there's so many free software programs out there now. Everybody can make their own videos. And tables and figures. Scientific data is still an important part of our work, and we need to make those things interesting to people so that they can understand it better. So I'm going to focus on one tool, which are conceptual diagrams. I'm going to go over what they are, why they're effective, and how they can be used, and then I'm going to use a tutorial online so that you guys can do that yourself. So what are conceptual diagrams? Concept is a noun, something conceived in the mind, and a diagram is a noun, a drawing that shows relations. So basically, a conceptual diagram is a diagram that uses symbols that depicts the essential attributes of a system. And don't worry, you don't have to hand draw them anymore. We have software for that. You've probably actually already heard of conceptual diagrams. You just might not have called them conceptual diagrams. But what they do is they provide synthesis, visualization, and context in one picture. And so this is obviously plate tectonics. We've probably all seen this in our basic biology or physics textbook. So what makes conceptual diagrams so effective? Well, I think that they help clarify thinking. When you really have to sit down and draw out on a piece of paper or on a whiteboard what you're trying to say about an ecosystem or a process, it really helps for you to clarify your thinking. It aids in communication, not only in one-way communication. You can have a final diagram that's in a publication and it's describing something to the reader so that the reader learns something, but also in two-way communication. You send it to your colleague and you say, hey, this is what I'm thinking is happening, in my local river. Is this what you're thinking? And you guys can go back and forth. So there's that two-way communication. They also they do tend to identify data gaps, areas of knowledge that you just don't know about. They can help prioritize what you need to do next, and they can also kind of really get down to the key features and threats of a system so that you have to really pare it down to the key priorities and not just throw everything on there. So diagrams are an interface between scientists, government, and the community. This is another thing. Sometimes science seems a little off-putting. It might be too technical for people, but diagrams can really take that science knowledge and make them useful for the community and for the government. This is an example of a diagram for the Assateague National Seashore, and so you've got the Back Bays of Maryland, and then you've got the Assateague National Seashore. It's showing what the community is using. It's showing what the managers need to use and think about. And down here, I just want to point out that there's a legend. So for all these diagrams, especially when they're this complicated, you can divide up the diagram into different features and have a legend so that everybody can follow along. Conceptual diagrams can illustrate complex processes. I think a lot of people struggle with how to simplify their information down. But here is a one-picture diagram of eutrophication. So if someone said to you, how do you define eutrophication? You could go on and on and on for minutes. You could write multiple pages about it with references. But this picture really illustrates how eutrophication happens, how it affects the ecosystem in one simple picture. Also, our diagrams can be used at different scales. So we do have a symbol library, and we have diagrams that can be complete ecosystems, like the Assateague one shown here. But then we actually have symbols all the way down to the mangrove roots and what's happening on a mangrove root. We have geochemical processes, biogeochemical processes that you could do. So if you're just looking at sediment chemistry, go for it. You can make a conceptual diagram. They communicate ecosystem relationships. This is just another example. It's trying to answer the question, how does the groundwater system work in North Kona, which is in Hawaii? This is part of a Hawaii poster that we did for the National Park Service. And it's combining a lot of different processes at a large scale and connecting those through the diagram. The components of a diagram, our diagrams are the base. So here you have a 2D diagram, just basic water and land. You have something like this, which is a comparison diagram. You could put a healthy ecosystem on one side and mirror it with maybe a polluted system on the other side. We have 3D diagrams that you can populate. And we even take maps and can make a base out of a map of any system that you have. Onto that base, you're going to use symbols, and symbols are language independent and universal, which means that you can take these around the world and people can really understand that the pi symbol really means, it's a mathematical symbol, that a sunny sky is going to be showing some type of weather. So these symbols are very universal, very useful in other countries. We also have symbols that represent something tangible. So we have tons of animals and plants and everything that you could possibly want there, and we're always making new symbols for new areas of the world. And the symbols can represent something invisible and intangible, and this is something that we really focus on is the processes that are happening. To connect those processes in a diagram is really useful. This is just a screenshot of what our symbols look like. They're very useful for scientists and managers because they do focus on ecosystem science, natural processes, things like that. And there's I think there's at least 3,000 symbols now. Just remember to use color and size of the symbols to convey information. This diagram is just showing a degraded system versus a desired system in a coral reef. But using the colors, like the color of the water over here is brown and green, whereas over here it's a beautiful blue, or the sediment plume here. This is a big sediment plume versus a little one. So these kinds of size and colors can actually help your diagram provide more information. If you don't want to get to the complete full conceptual diagram place, you can always use your symbols in different types of graphs or figures that you're using in your presentations or on a poster. It makes the data more accessible to people. If they can see the actual thing that you're talking about in a symbol variety, they're going to be more inclined to look at your graph. They can be used in tables to reinforce what you're talking about. A lot of people just like to look at pictures. They don't necessarily want to read, so this provides them with both. And symbols can be used in infographics. So this is an infographic from the Maryland carbon pollution, the greenhouse gas reduction plan. And in this case, you're using symbols to walk people through the point of the plan. And just to reiterate again, the diagrams can be produced in real time to create a shared vision. This is a sketch on a whiteboard of a pretty basic diagram of the different components of a system. This was then sketched out into more detail in an actual product. This is the front cover, and then this is going to be the diagram. And then the start of the diagram, turned into this in the diagram creator. So you can build these as a group together, and the different iterative processes is really important. And then it's synthesizing the key messages together as a group. They can also transform pages and pages of text into a synthesized, impact of visualization. So this is just taking a similar approach, but using a pictorial format that it's a lot more, eye-friendly and interesting. And conceptual diagrams can be incorporated in science publications. I know a lot of us, it seems like it's kind of cartoony, but they've been used many times in science journals already. More and more journals are being published in color, which is useful. We're always going to conferences where we're using posters to try to explain our science to each other, and one conceptual diagram can really sum it up pretty well. If that's the only thing that someone looks at on your poster, I call that success. And reports. We're more and more working with managers and research managers and policymakers, and so the work that you're doing, can be put into these types of reports. So I'm going to switch over to the online tool. So just let me know if it doesn't show up okay. Should be fine. This is our website, en.unc.edu, and there's a bunch of options and things to look at. But under tools, we have the image library I was talking about, the symbols library, and this online diagram creator. It does require a registration with a sign-in and a password, so I've already gone ahead and signed in online so that we can start using it. But I encourage you guys to use this online for free and make all your diagrams if you want. And if you have any more questions about it, I'm definitely available via email, or if you're having troubleshooting problems getting registered or something like that, just let me know. But basically what you have here is what is essentially like a PowerPoint presentation, in the sense that you can draw with a pencil, you can make squares, you can make, any kind of shape, just like you would in PowerPoint. You can change the colors and stuff like that. But today I'm just going to focus on our symbols. So once you're in here, there's this little image library, and you click on it, and up comes all of our symbol libraries. You can also Google things in the keyword search. It's not really Googling, but it's this our search engine on here. So I'm going to go to the ecosystems folder, which is all of our bases. And you can browse through each one of these. So you go down, you can see there's some 2D, there's some 3D, there's a variety of different options that you can use. And I'm going to pick Coastline 3D Beach. So I click on that, and it appears on my artboard. Here's the edge of it, and I can click and drag the edge and make it the entire width of the artboard, like a piece of paper. It's not really there, but it kind of gives you the frame. So then you've got your base, and I want to describe how macroalgae is getting all over the beaches, and no one can recreate at the beach. So under here, you got to go look for flora macroalgae, and you can pick any number of, if you're really into macroalgae, we've got tons of macroalgae, because we do have people that request these things to us, so we make them, and we've used them in our own work. When I was first a student, I used this all the time for my graduate work. So I'm going to put macroalgae all over the place, and you can actually copy and paste these over and over again. You could always go pick more different kinds if you want to have a bunch of different types. I'm just going to make it look like it's, infested the waters and the beach. Oopsies, I moved my base. And I'll put this in the water so you can see it's coming in the water everywhere. All right. So once you get enough macroalgae that it looks to be a problem, then I'm going to go back, and we have a lot of human options. So we have a lot of agricultural, aquaculture, climate change, all sorts of things that you can use. And so I'm going to go over to here to recreation. And we have lots of different recreation, but I'm just going to focus on beach recreation. So it's all in alphabetical order. Sunbathing, I guess that's what we mean when we have like a chair and a cooler with sunbathing. So I'm going to put this on my beach. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to put a red cross through it to make it so that people realize you can't sunbathe because there's so much macroalgae. We have this folder called modifiers, and that has a big red X in it. You could also make your own X's, obviously, with all the drawing tools. I keep moving my base. So it takes a little finagling with the online thing, and you can always zoom in. I could zoom in a lot more and get a lot more detail. So we can put crosses through things to mean that you can't do it. And I'm going to go back to recreation, and I want to connect the things on land to the things in the water, so I'm going to put a swimmer in the water, and maybe I'll have her drowning on macroalgae, who knows. There she is. She's smaller even than the macroalgae itself. I could put her upside down, I guess, if I wanted to. But you see that there's plenty of options. This is just a very, very quick, look at how you can use this. And what I would do, I would put in, you can write text, so you would want to make sure that you have your legend. Put a little tiny person swimming and put the no swimming legend, and just like in PowerPoint, these can all be changed, fonts and colors and folds and all that. That's all up here at the top. So you can work with this as you go through. Now, at this point, I'm ready to use it. So I want to say, okay, well, how can I get this on my computer? Well, here you can save your image. You can export as a PNG. So if you do save image, it's going to go find a file, and it's going to save it as an SVG. An SVG is an editable file, and that means that when you come back later on into the diagram creator, you can open your image and continue to work on it. So you just browse through your image, and you can open it again and continue working on it. Now, if you want to use it in a PowerPoint presentation or on a website, you want to export it as a PNG. That's a non-editable file that you just use just like a photo. And so when you're really done and you're really ready to use it in a different program, then you would export as a PNG. So this is just a very quick overview of this online tool that anybody can use. And like I said, you just register, and please ask me any questions about it. This is something that we wanted to provide as a public use, because getting the software like Adobe Illustrator or something like that is not the easiest. It's expensive, and it's also a steep learning curve. And so we wanted to make sure that people could use something online that was easily accessible for all of our symbols that we've created. I just have a few more slides, and then we'll wrap up and have questions. So I just want to reiterate that we want to think about using science communication in a variety of science communication products, and that these conceptual diagrams and other science communication tools like images and math, video, they can be used in a variety of science communication products. So don't just keep yourself to your science journal or the poster at a presentation. Think outside the box. Think about websites and apps. I hope everyone has a website and is updating it. Thinking about how more and more people use mobile apps rather than a full website even. So there's always reasons to communicate in different media. Finally, invest in science communication. So building this library of high-quality visual elements, we've been doing this for years and years and years, but I use these maps over and over again. I use that key photo of a macroalgae bloom on a beach, all the time. And so when you have this library of high-quality visuals, it really pays off in the long time. They can be recycled for various media. So you might make a conceptual diagram and put it into a PowerPoint presentation, and then later on realize, oh, this is going to be perfect for a poster. And with the diagram creator, you can change the different sizes to be good for a poster or good for a website, whatever you need. And just remember that good science communication helps convey information. It helps make a good impression on your audience. No one wants to sit through a boring presentation with no pictures, or it's dark and you're just reading, the text on a slide. So take into consideration the time and effort other people are putting in with you, and it helps make a difference. And I think ultimately that is what we're trying to do. We're trying to empower change through good science communication. So I just want to, in summary about the conceptual diagrams, you can quickly and effectively sketch, these scientific concepts. Try it at your desk. Get some colored pencils. Use your notebook. Use computer paper. You don't really need the artistic talent. We've provided you with the software and the symbols. Just click and drag. And always draft and revise. You're going to go through multiple iterations of these things and obtain maybe stakeholder input and feedback, but also, colleagues. So it's always good. Constructive criticism. It's hard to take, but, showing people your diagrams and science communication products will make them better in the end. They'll be clearer. They'll help you understand your science even better. So I think I'll leave it at that. I think my last slide is just, if you need to contact me, if you'd like to, please do. My email, phone number, and our website, of course.